Ethan Caldwell silenced his pregnant wife's call with the flick of a thumb, sent it straight to voicemail, and slid his phone face down on the restaurant table so the woman across from him wouldn't see Olivia's name light up the screen. He smiled at Madison. He raised his glass, and in that single careless second, while his wife sat alone in a dark house with their unborn daughter kicking against her ribs, the most powerful billionaire in Chicago made the one decision that would burn his entire empire to the ground. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. If you believe a man should never abandon the woman who loved him when he had nothing, then subscribe to this channel right now and stay with me all the way to the end, because this story turns in ways you will not see coming. And do me one small favor. Tell me in the comments what city you are watching from so I can see just how far Ethan Caldwell's story has traveled tonight. For 7 years, Ethan Caldwell had told himself the same comfortable lie every single morning, and the lie was this: that he had built the perfect life and that nothing and no one could ever take it from him. He believed it when he shaved in front of the mirror in his 42nd floor penthouse. He believed it when his driver opened the car door and the whole city seemed to bend toward him. He believed it when investors laughed at his jokes a half-second too long, when strangers whispered his name in restaurants, when his own reflection in the glass of the tower he owned looked back at him like a king. He believed it right up until the night his wife looked him in the eye and said 7 quiet words that ended the man he used to be. But we are not there yet. We start earlier on an ordinary Tuesday because betrayal never announces itself. It arrives disguised as an ordinary Tuesday. Olivia Caldwell was 8 months pregnant, and she was sitting at the long marble island in a kitchen, far too big for 2 people holding her phone against her ear, listening to it ring. "Come on, Ethan," she whispered. "Pick up. Just this once. Pick up." It rang 4 times. Then it went dead the way a call goes dead when someone on the other end presses a button to make you disappear. She lowered the phone. She placed both hands on the curve of her belly, and she felt the baby move, and she said out loud to no one, "Your daddy is very busy tonight." She had been saying that a lot lately. "Your daddy is very busy. Your daddy had a late meeting. Your daddy is traveling for the company." She had said it so many times that the words had worn smooth in her mouth like a stone rubbed by a river, and she was starting to hate the sound of them. 3 miles away, in a private dining room on the top floor of a restaurant, most people could never afford to enter, Ethan turned his phone face down and looked across the table at Madison Blake. "Everything all right?" Madison asked. "Fine," Ethan said. "Just work." Madison Blake was 29 years old, and she had a way of looking at a man like he was the only interesting thing in the room. She leaned forward. She let her fingers rest lightly against the base of her wineglass, and she smiled at him like she believed every ordinary thing he said was brilliant. "You know what I like about you, Ethan," she said. "Tell me." "You're not like the men I meet. They all want to impress me. You don't have to try. You just walk into a room and the whole world rearranges itself around you." And Ethan, a man of 42 years, a man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals, a man who had stared down boards of directors and crushed competitors twice his size, felt his chest swell with something warm and stupid and dangerous. Because that was the thing about Ethan Caldwell. Every man has a door, and behind that door is the one thing that will destroy him. And Madison had found Ethan's door on the very first night she met him. His door was flattery. His door was being seen the way he saw himself. At home, Olivia stood up slowly, one hand on the small of her back, and walked to the window. The rain had started. It streaked down the glass in long silver lines, and beyond it, Lake Michigan was a dark, restless nothing. She was not stupid. That was the first thing you needed to understand about Olivia Caldwell. People looked at her, the quiet wife of a loud billionaire, and they assumed she was fragile. They assumed she was decoration. They were wrong. Before Ethan had a single dollar, Olivia had been the sharpest mind in every room she entered, and marriage had not made her dull. It had only made her patient, and a patient woman notices things. She had noticed the phone that used to sit unlocked on the counter now lived in his pocket face down always. She had noticed the late nights that used to end at 9 and now ended at 1. She had noticed the cologne, a new one. She had never bought it for him. She had noticed the way he flinched just slightly whenever her name appeared on his screen like a man touching something hot. And most of all, she had noticed that the husband who used to come home and press his hand against her belly and whisper to their daughter had stopped doing it. He walked past her now. He kissed her forehead the way you kiss an ant. He said, "How are you feeling?" and did not wait for the answer. Olivia pressed her forehead against the cold window and closed her eyes. "I know something is wrong," she whispered. "I just don't know how big it is yet." She was about to find out, and it was so much bigger than she feared. Back at the restaurant, Madison excused herself, and the moment she was gone, Ethan let out a long breath and rubbed his eyes. For one honest second alone at the table, the warm feeling drained out of him, and something colder took its place. Guilt. He picked up his phone. He looked at the missed call. Olivia. He looked at the little photo next to her name, the one he had taken years ago, back when they had nothing back, when they shared a one-room apartment and split a single sandwich for dinner, and laughed about it because they were young and broke and completely ferociously in love. His thumb hovered over the callback button. "Just tell her the truth," said a small voice in the back of his mind. "End this now. Go home. She saved you once. She would forgive you. Go home." And then Madison came back to the table, and the small voice went silent, and Ethan put the phone away. That right there was the moment. Not the affair, not the lies. This. The moment a man hears the truth in his own chest and chooses to walk away from it. Remember that moment, because Ethan would spend the rest of his life trying to buy his way back to it, and he would learn that it was the one thing his billions could not purchase. At home, Olivia's phone buzzed. Her heart jumped. Ethan. But it was not Ethan. It was a woman named Claire, a friend from years back before the money, one of the few people from the old life who still called Olivia just to talk. And Claire's message was strange. "Hey, call me when you can. It's probably nothing. But I saw something tonight, and I can't stop thinking about it." Olivia stared at the words. Something cold moved down her spine. She called. "Claire, what is it?" There was a long pause on the other end, the kind of pause that tells you the next sentence is going to change your life. "Olivia," Claire said gently, "where's Ethan tonight?" "He's at a business dinner. Why?" Another pause. "I'm at Revel, the restaurant on the top of the Hartwell building. My cousin got engaged and we're celebrating. And Olivia, I don't want to be that person, I really don't, but Ethan is here, and he's not with clients." Olivia's hand tightened around the phone. "What do you mean he's not with clients?" "He's with a woman, just the two of them, in one of the private rooms. And Liv, I've been watching for 20 minutes and it doesn't look like a meeting. It looks like a date." The kitchen was very quiet. The rain kept falling. And here is the thing about Olivia Caldwell that Madison never counted on, that Ethan in 7 years had forgotten. When most people receive news like this, they shatter. They scream, they cry, they call the man and demand answers. Olivia did not shatter. Olivia went very, very calm. The kind of calm that settles over the ocean, right before the wave. "Claire," she said, and her voice did not shake. "I need you to do something for me. Don't let them see you. Don't make a scene. Just watch, and tell me what you see." "Liv, are you okay?" "No," Olivia said honestly, "but I will be. Now watch." For the next 20 minutes, Olivia sat at that marble island, one hand on her unborn daughter, and listened to another woman describe her husband falling in love with a stranger. She listened to Claire describe the way he leaned in, the way he laughed, the way Madison touched his hand. And with every word, Olivia did not cry. She thought. Because a crying woman asks why. A thinking woman asks how deep does this go? And Olivia Caldwell had a feeling, a cold and certain feeling in the pit of her stomach, that this was not just an affair. She had spent 7 years watching Ethan's business. She was not on the board. She was not an executive. But she was smarter than half the men who were, and she had noticed something in the last 2 months that had nothing to do with the late nights and the new cologne, money. Small things, documents Ethan left open on his laptop before quickly closing them. A partner named Gerald Vance, who had suddenly become very friendly, very present, always circling. And a name she had seen more than once in Ethan's emails, a name that meant nothing to her at the time. Blake. "Claire," Olivia said slowly, The woman he's with. Can you get a name, anything? A first name, a last name, anything at all. I can try. The staff might know her. She looks like she's been here before. Try, please. While Claire worked, Olivia did something she had not done in a long time. She walked into Ethan's home office, the one room in the house he thought of as his, and she sat down in his chair. She was not looking for evidence of an affair. She already had that. She was looking for something worse. Because a woman who has just learned her husband is cheating asks one question. But a woman who has spent her whole life underestimated learns to ask a better one. Not who is she, but why now? Why after 7 years? Why in the last 2 months? Why while I am 8 months pregnant and least able to fight? Why has everything started to change all at once? Ethan's desk was locked. Of course it was. But Olivia had lived with this man for 7 years, and she knew that people who think they are the smartest person in every room become careless because they cannot imagine anyone catching up to them. She reached under the lip of the desk, and there taped exactly where she knew it would be, because she was the one who had taught him this trick years ago. In the old apartment was a small key. He had forgotten she taught him that. He had forgotten a lot of things about her. She opened the drawer, and that is where this story truly begins. Not with the affair, not with the phone call, but with a pregnant woman sitting alone in her husband's chair at midnight opening a drawer and finding the first thread of a betrayal so large it would take her breath away. Inside the drawer were papers, financial papers, and Olivia, who had once been the sharpest mind in every room before she became a billionaire's decoration, began to read. At first they made no sense. Transfer agreements, access authorizations, a restructuring of company shares that she did not recognize drafted only 3 weeks ago. But the more she read, the colder she became, because there was a pattern in these documents, and the pattern pointed at a single terrible conclusion. Ethan was slowly, without realizing it, signing away control of the company he had built. Not selling it, not losing it in a bad deal. Something quieter, something disguised. Someone was carefully, patiently gathering the pieces of Ethan's empire into their own hands, one signature at a time, and Ethan, drunk on flattery and distracted by a beautiful young woman, was signing everything they put in front of him. Olivia's phone buzzed. Claire. I got it. Her name. The staff know her. She comes in with a man named Vance sometimes. Her name is Madison Blake. Liv. Are you there, Liv? Olivia was staring at the documents in her hand. Because there on the authorization forms, on the transfer agreements, on the papers her husband had signed away his life's work to, was a signature, a witness, a name, Madison Blake, and beneath it a company, the firm handling the restructuring, and the managing partner of that firm, Gerald Vance. Olivia set the papers down very slowly. "Oh, Ethan," she whispered, "you beautiful fool. She's not your affair. She's your assassin. And you invited her in through the front door." She understood it all now in one cold rush. The affair was not the crime. The affair was the weapon. Madison Blake had not seduced Ethan because she wanted him. She had seduced him because a distracted man signs whatever you put in front of him. A man who feels adored stops reading the fine print. A man who feels like a king stops guarding his own gates. They were not stealing his heart. They were using his heart to steal everything else. And in 8 months, when the baby came and Ethan finally lifted his head, it would already be gone. The company, the wealth, all of it, transferred away in 100 quiet signatures, perfectly legal, perfectly hidden, executed, while a pregnant woman was ignored in a dark house and told your daddy is very busy. For the first time all night, Olivia felt her eyes sting. But she did not cry for herself. She did not even cry for the marriage, which she understood now was already dead, had been dead for weeks, murdered by cologne and flattery, and a phone turned face down. She cried for the man Ethan used to be, the one who split sandwiches, the one who cried the day their company survived its first year, the one who used to press his hand to her belly and whisper, "We did it. We did all of it. Just us." That man was gone. And the man who had replaced him was about to lose everything and did not even know it. She wiped her eyes. She stood. She placed the papers carefully back exactly as she had found them because she was not finished, because she needed more, because a woman who is going to fight a war does not fire her first shot before she has counted every enemy. And then Olivia Caldwell made a decision that would decide the fate of everyone in this story. She would not warn him. Not yet. Not because she was cruel, but because she knew Ethan. If she ran to him now and said, "They are robbing you and the woman you desire is a thief," he would not believe her. He would think she was jealous. He would think she was a scared, pregnant wife inventing conspiracies. He would defend Madison. He might even tell Madison, and then they would know Olivia knew, and they would move faster, and the trap would close before Olivia could break it. No. She needed proof so complete, so undeniable, that even a man blinded by his own reflection would be forced to see. So she would wait. She would gather. She would build a folder, photos, messages, bank records, everything. And then when she was ready, she would let her husband walk into their dark house one rainy night, and she would be standing in the living room, holding the truth in her hands, and she would say the 7 words that would end his old life and begin the hardest journey of his. But that night was still weeks away. For now, Olivia turned off the light in Ethan's office, walked slowly back to the kitchen, and picked up her phone. "Claire," she said, "thank you. You may have just saved my family, but I need you to promise me something. You never saw Ethan tonight. You were never at that restaurant. Can you do that? Liv, what's going on? I'll tell you everything soon, I promise. But right now, the safest thing you can do for me is forget, please." Claire was quiet a moment. Then she said, "You're not the woman I thought you'd be right now. I thought you'd be a wreck." "I was a wreck an hour ago," Olivia said softly. "Now I'm something else." She hung up. She looked out at the rain. And somewhere across the city, her husband was laughing at another woman's joke, completely unaware that the ground beneath his gleaming tower had just started to crack. Ethan came home that night at 1:30. He expected the house to be dark. He expected Olivia to be asleep. He was already rehearsing his story, the late meeting the difficult client, the apology he would offer in the morning with breakfast and flowers, the little performance of a busy man who loves his family and simply works too hard. He opened the door quietly, and the light in the living room was on. He stopped. Olivia was sitting in the armchair by the window, one hand resting on her belly, watching him. She was not angry. She was not crying. She was simply awake at 1:30 in the morning, waiting. "You're up," Ethan said, and even to his own ears the words sounded false. "I couldn't sleep," Olivia said. "The baby's been kicking all night." He relaxed. This he could handle. He crossed the room, sat on the arm of her chair, put on his warmest voice. "You should be resting. You know what the doctor said." "I know exactly what the doctor said, Ethan." Something in her voice made him look at her, but her face was calm, unreadable, and he told himself he was imagining it. "How was your dinner?" she asked. "Long," he said. "Vance had a whole team there. You know how these things go, numbers all night." "Vance," Olivia repeated. "Gerald Vance." "Yeah, and it was just business." "Of course it was just business." He laughed lightly. "What else would it be?" And Olivia looked up at her husband, at this man she had loved for a third of her life, at this man who was lying to her face while their unborn daughter kicked beneath her hand, and she felt something inside her go quiet and hard and permanent. "No reason," she said. "I just missed you, that's all." Ethan felt the guilt rise again, that small, cold voice, and he pushed it down the way he always did. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "I missed you too," he lied. "Come on, let's get you to bed." He helped her up. He walked her to the bedroom. He tucked the blanket around her the way a good husband would, and he turned off the light, and he told himself he was a good man in a difficult season, and that soon, once the deal with Vance closed, he would have more time and everything would go back to the way it was. He had no idea there would be no going back. He had no idea that the woman lying beside him in the dark had already seen the map of his ruin. He had no idea that the deal with Vance was the ruin. Olivia lay awake long after his breathing slowed into sleep, and in the darkness, one hand on her belly, she made a promise to her daughter, and she made it out loud in a whisper so soft it would not wake the man beside her. "I am not going to let them take everything from you before you're even born," she whispered. "I don't know if I can save your father, but I am going to save your future, whatever it costs me." And the baby kicked once, as if she had heard. Over the next 3 weeks, Olivia became someone Ethan never noticed, because Ethan had stopped noticing her long ago, and that carelessness was about to become the most expensive mistake of his life. While Ethan worked late, Olivia worked later. She could not access his company systems directly, but she did not need to. She had lived beside this business for 7 years, and she knew its bones. She knew which lawyer had handled their marriage. She knew which accountant had filed their taxes. She knew the quiet, loyal people from the early days, the ones Ethan had left behind as he climbed the ones who still remembered when Olivia was the one making the coffee and reading the contracts. She called an old accountant named Harold, a soft-spoken man in his 60s, who had done the company's books back when the company was 3 people in a leaking office. "Olivia," Harold said warmly. "My goodness, how long has it been?" "Too long, Harold. And I hate that I'm only calling you now when I need something. But Harold, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me, even if it's hard." "Of course, anything. You know that." Olivia took a breath. "Have you noticed anything strange with Ethan's company in the last few months? Anything about the ownership, the shares, the structure?" There was a long silence on the line. "Harold." "Olivia," he said slowly, "I'm not with the company anymore. They brought in a new firm about 6 months ago, Vance and Partners. They took everything in-house. I got a very polite letter thanking me for my years of service." He paused. "But I'll tell you what I told my wife the day I got that letter. In 40 years of accounting, whenever someone rushes to change the firm that watches the money, it is never ever because they want cleaner books." Olivia closed her eyes. "Harold," she said, "I think someone is stealing my husband's company right out from under him, and I think he's helping them do it without knowing it. And I have 3, maybe 4 weeks before it's too late to stop it." "What do you need me to do?" Harold said without a moment's hesitation. And that was the second thing Madison Blake and Gerald Vance never counted on. They had studied Ethan. They knew his vanity, his blind spots, his hunger to be adored. They had built their entire scheme around the man they could see. They had never once looked at the woman standing behind him. They had looked right past Olivia Caldwell the way everyone always did, and that mistake was going to cost them everything. The days that followed moved like 2 rivers running side by side so close they nearly touched, but flowing in opposite directions. In one river, Ethan Caldwell was happier than he had been in years. Madison made him feel young. Vance made him feel invincible. The deal was almost done, and every meeting ended with handshakes and champagne and the warm assurance that this restructuring would double his fortune. He came home late and slept easily, and told himself the strange heaviness he sometimes felt in his chest was just the pressure of being a great man, doing great things. In the other river, Olivia Caldwell was building a folder. She met Harold in a small cafe far from the city center, a place no one who knew Ethan would ever go, and Harold brought printouts and diagrams in a legal pad covered in his careful old-fashioned handwriting, and piece by piece, the two of them assembled the truth. The restructuring was a trap. Vance's firm had inserted clauses deep in dense documents Ethan never fully read that shifted controlling interest in stages. Each stage looked minor, each signature looked routine, but strung together over 90 days, they added up to a complete transfer of power. In 3 more weeks on the day the final papers were signed, Gerald Vance would legally control the company Ethan Caldwell had built with his own hands. And Ethan would find out only when it was already done. "There's more," Harold said quietly one afternoon, sliding a paper across the table. "I made some calls. Old friends in the business. Olivia, this Madison Blake. She isn't just Vance's associate. 3 years ago, she did the exact same thing to another company in Denver. Same pattern. A distracted owner, a charming young executive, a quiet transfer. By the time the man understood what happened, he'd lost everything, and it was all perfectly legal because he'd signed every page himself." Olivia stared at the paper. "She's done this before," she said. "She's a professional," Harold said. "Ethan isn't her first. He's just the biggest." Olivia sat back. Her hand found her belly, and for a long moment she said nothing at all. Then she said in a voice so quiet, Harold had to lean in to hear it, Then I'm going to make sure Ethan is her last. But even then, even with all of it laid out in front of her, Olivia discovered that the deepest wound was still waiting for her, and it had nothing to do with the company. Because one evening, going through the shared cloud account where the household bills lived, an account Ethan never touched because he considered such small things beneath him, Olivia found something that made her put her hand over her mouth. A savings account. Not one she recognized. Not the joint accounts, not the investment funds. A small private savings account opened years ago in her own name. She had forgotten it existed, but she had not forgotten why she opened it. Long ago, before the money, before the tower, before Madison Blake was anything but a stranger in another city, when Ethan's company was drowning and about to die, Olivia had done something she never told him. She had quietly sold the only thing of value she owned, an inheritance from her grandmother land that had been in her family for generations, and she had poured every cent of it into saving Ethan's dream. She had told him the money came from a loan. She had let him believe it, because she knew his pride, and she knew that if he ever learned his wife had bled her own family's legacy to keep him alive, it would break something in him. She had saved his company with her own inheritance, and then she had opened this little account, this quiet account, and every single month since, without telling anyone, she had put a small amount away. Not for herself, for their child, for the future, for the daughter she had not yet met but had loved for 8 months. A small secret shield against a world she had never fully trusted, built one quiet deposit at a time by a woman everyone assumed was decoration. Olivia looked at the balance, years of quiet saving, and beside it the memory of the inheritance she had given up to save the very empire that was now being stolen from them. And that was the moment alone in a beautiful house at night that Olivia Caldwell finally cried. Not because Ethan had betrayed her. She had made her peace with that. She cried because she had given up her grandmother's land, her family's history, everything her people had held for 100 years to save a man's dream. And that man had grown so certain of his own greatness that he had stopped seeing her at all. He had traded the woman who bled for him for a stranger who was robbing him. He had thrown away the one person who had proven with the deed to her family's land that she loved him more than she loved anything she owned. She cried for a long time, and then she stopped. She wiped her face. She stood up. She placed both hands on her belly and felt her daughter move, and she took a long, steadying breath, and something in her face changed, and it never fully changed back. "All right," she said softly to the empty room, to her sleeping daughter, to the ghost of the woman she used to be. "No more crying. You had your night. Now you build your case. You save what can be saved, and you let the man you married learn the lesson he's been running from his whole life." Because Olivia understood something now, something Ethan would not understand until he had lost everything, something Madison and Vance would not understand until it was too late. She understood that the strongest person in any room is almost never the loudest. It is the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who has been paying attention. And so, while a billionaire slept soundly in a bed his wife's inheritance had helped to buy, and while a beautiful stranger prepared to steal his kingdom, and while a lawyer named Vance counted the days until his quiet victory, one woman sat alone at a marble island in the dark, a folder growing thicker beside her, one hand on her unborn child, and waited. She was in no hurry now. She knew exactly how this had to end. Ethan Caldwell had built his entire life on a lie. He told himself every morning that he had the perfect life and that nothing could ever take it from him. In just a few short weeks, on a rainy night in a dark house, his wife was going to stand in front of him and prove with photos and messages and bank records and the truth about his own company that everything he believed was wrong, that his empire was already gone, that his mistress was a thief, that the woman he had ignored had sold her family's land to save him and had never once asked for thanks, and that the 7 words she was going to say to him would strip away every illusion he had ever hidden behind. "I know everything, Ethan, but you don't know what I found about you." But she was not ready to say them yet, not until the folder was complete, not until she had counted every enemy, not until the man who thought he controlled every situation was standing exactly where she needed him to stand, on the edge of the ruin he had built with his own hands about to fall. And so on this ordinary night that had begun with a silenced phone call and a wine glass raised in a private room, Olivia Caldwell closed the folder, turned off the last light in the house, and rested one hand gently on the daughter, who did not yet know that her mother was quietly and completely the strongest person in the entire city. Outside, the rain kept falling on Lake Michigan. And somewhere in the dark, the first crack in a billionaire's perfect life spread silently wider, one signature at a time, exactly as his forgotten wife had always known it would. The folder was almost complete, but Olivia Caldwell had learned something in those weeks of quiet gathering that she had not expected to learn. She had learned that the closer you get to the truth, the more it costs you to hold it. Because every night now, Ethan came home and kissed her forehead, and every night she smiled back at him, and every single one of those smiles took something out of her that she would never get back. "You seem different lately," Ethan said one morning over coffee he had not made and would not clean up. Calmer, happier almost. Olivia looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Do I?" "Yeah, pregnancy suits you." He was already looking at his phone. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." And Olivia thought if you only knew what I was doing, you would not be able to drink that coffee, but she just said, "I'll try." She had learned to play this part so well that it frightened her. 7 years of marriage had taught her every one of Ethan's rhythms, and now she used them like a musician. When he wanted admiration, she gave him a little. When he wanted to be left alone, she let him go. She had become the perfect wife in the exact week she had stopped being a wife at all, and the irony of it sat in her stomach like a stone. Because here was the truth that no one tells you about betrayal. The hardest part is not the moment you find out. The hardest part is every ordinary morning after, when you have to hand a traitor his coffee and watch him not even see your hands shaking. 2 weeks before the signing. That was the number that lived behind Olivia's eyes now. Harold had confirmed it. The final documents, the ones that would transfer the last controlling share of Ethan's company into Gerald Vance's hands, were scheduled to be signed in 14 days. After that, nothing could be undone. After that, it would all be legal and permanent and gone. 14 days, and then 13, and then 12. Olivia met Harold in the little cafe again, and this time the old accountant did not smile when she sat down. "What is it?" she said immediately. "Something's wrong. Tell me." Harold slid a single sheet of paper across the table. They moved up the timeline. Olivia's blood went cold. Moved it up to when? 9 days. They're signing in 9 days, Olivia, not 14. He rubbed his forehead. "I don't know why, but in my experience when people rush a deal like this, it's because they've gotten nervous. Someone spooked them, or someone's watching." Olivia sat very still. "Harold," she said slowly, "have you talked to anyone about this? Anyone at all?" "No one. Only you. I swear it." "Then how would they know to get nervous?" And in that moment, a terrible thought crawled up Olivia's spine, and she had to set down her cup because her hand was no longer steady. What if she had made a mistake somewhere? What if in all her careful gathering she had left one thread hanging loose, and someone had noticed it and pulled? "Harold," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. The accountant they brought in to replace you, the one who works for Vance now. Do you know him?" Harold's face changed. "I know of him. Why?" "Because 3 days ago I called the old bank, the small one Ethan used before he was rich, to confirm one of the transfers. I used my own name. I thought it was safe. It was our personal account. But the man who called me back to confirm the details wasn't the manager I remembered. It was someone new. He asked a lot of questions. He asked why I was interested. And I told him I was just organizing our family finances before the baby came." Harold went pale. "Olivia," he said, "the bank Ethan used to use, Vance's firm audits it. They took over the small commercial banks in that district 2 years ago. If a new man called you back and he asked why you were interested." "Then they know a Caldwell is asking questions," Olivia finished, "and they think it's me. Because it is me." The two of them sat in silence. "That's why they moved the date," Harold said quietly. "They think you're onto them. They don't know how much you know, so they're closing the deal before you can do anything about it." Olivia closed her eyes. 9 days. She had counted on 14, and now she had 9, and it was her own small mistake that had cost her the time. But when she opened her eyes, there was no panic in them. "All right," she said. "Then we go faster." That was the thing about Olivia Caldwell that kept saving her. She did not waste time on the mistake. She spent it on the fix. "The folder is almost done," she said. "But almost isn't enough anymore. To stop this in 9 days, I don't just need to prove they're stealing the company. I need to prove they're doing it illegally. Because if it's all technically legal, all those signatures Ethan gave, then even the truth won't stop the signing. They'll just say he agreed to everything, and they'll be right. So what do you need?" "I need to prove the affair and the fraud are connected. I need to prove Madison seduced Ethan as a deliberate part of the scheme. Because that changes everything. That's not business anymore. That's coercion. That's a conspiracy to defraud. If I can prove Madison and Vance planned this together, planned to use the affair as the weapon, then those signatures aren't valid consent. They're the product of a fraud, and a fraud can be undone." Harold stared at her. "How does a wife prove a conspiracy in 9 days?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made Harold's stomach drop. "I'm going to get Madison Blake to tell me herself." 8 days before the signing, Olivia did not sleep that night. She lay beside Ethan and listened to him breathe, and she planned. Because what she was about to do was the most dangerous thing she had done yet, and if it went wrong, it would not just fail. It would warn them. It would tell Madison and Vance exactly how much Olivia knew, and it would end any chance she had left. She had one shot. The next morning after Ethan left, Olivia did something she had promised herself she would not do until she absolutely had to. She opened Ethan's laptop. She had never gone into his messages, not once in all these weeks. She had gathered everything from the outside, from Harold, from the documents, from the accounts, because she had wanted to keep her hands clean, because some quiet part of her had still hoped she was wrong, had still hoped that if she never looked directly at the affair, it might somehow not be real. But hope was a luxury she could no longer afford. She opened his messages, and there they were, weeks of them. Madison. Every night Olivia had spent alone. Every night she had said, "Your daddy is very busy." There was a message and another, and reading them was worse than she had imagined, not because they were passionate, but because they were so ordinary, so easy. He talked to Madison the way he used to talk to Olivia. He told Madison about his day. He told Madison he felt understood. He told Madison in one message that made Olivia have to stand up and walk away from the screen and press her hand to her mouth that he had married too young, that Olivia was a good woman, but they had grown apart, that he sometimes wondered what his life would have been if he'd waited. Grown apart. Olivia stood in the kitchen with her hand over her mouth and thought, "We didn't grow apart, Ethan. You walked away. I've been standing in the same place for 7 years. You just stopped looking back." But she did not cry. She had done her crying. She had promised herself. She went back to the laptop, and she kept reading. And underneath the ordinary cruelty of the affair, she began to see it. The thing she was looking for, the seam where the personal met the professional. Because Madison was careful, but Madison was not perfect. Every so often a message slipped. A reference to Vance. A joke about a meeting. Once a single line that made Olivia's heart stop. "Don't worry about the Denver thing. That was different. You're not going to end up like him, I promise." The Denver thing. The man Madison had ruined 3 years ago. She had mentioned it to Ethan, casually, reassuring him, which meant Ethan knew about Denver, or at least knew the word and had not thought to be afraid of it. Olivia took a screenshot of every message. She saved them to the folder, and then she found what she had truly been hoping for, buried in a thread. From 2 weeks earlier, a message Madison had clearly sent to Ethan by mistake, because it was cut off halfway and followed immediately by, "Sorry, wrong chat, ignore that." The half message read, "Vance says once he signs the last one we can finally," and then it stopped. Once he signs the last one. Ethan. Once Ethan signs the last document, then Madison and Vance can finally. Finally, what Olivia did not know. But she knew this. Madison had a chat with Vance where they discussed the plan directly, a chat where Madison forgot herself and pasted a line to the wrong window. And if that chat existed and Olivia could get to it, then the whole thing would be proven not by wives' suspicions, not by an accountant's diagrams, but by the conspirator's own words. The problem was that Olivia could not get into Madison's phone. but she could get Madison to meet her. 7 days before the signing, Olivia made the call from a number Madison would not recognize. "This is Madison Blake." "Hello, Madison," Olivia said, and she made her voice light, pleasant, unbothered. "My name is Olivia Caldwell. I believe you know my husband." There was a silence on the line so complete that Olivia could hear Madison's breathing change. "Mrs. Caldwell," Madison said carefully, "I'm not sure what you—" "Please," Olivia said gently, "let's not do that. I'm a grown woman, Madison. I've known for weeks, and I'm not calling to scream at you. I'm 8 months pregnant. I don't have the energy to scream." Another silence. Olivia could almost hear Madison recalculating. "Then why are you calling?" Madison said, and there was something in her voice now, something cautious and probing, a professional trying to figure out the angle. "Because I want to make a deal," Olivia said. "I want to talk. Just the two of us, woman to woman. I have a proposal that I think will make everyone's life easier, including yours, especially yours." "What kind of proposal?" "Not on the phone. Meet me tomorrow. There's a cafe on Wren Street. Public place, neutral ground. I'll be alone, obviously." She let out a small, tired laugh. "I can barely fit behind a table right now. I'm not going to jump you." Madison hesitated, and Olivia knew in that hesitation that she had guessed right about this woman, because a woman in love would have hung up. A woman in love would have been outraged or ashamed or afraid. But a woman running a con hears the words "make a deal" and cannot resist finding out what the Mark's wife thinks she has to offer. "All right," Madison said finally. "Tomorrow, the cafe on Wren Street. But Mrs. Caldwell, if this is some kind of trap—" "Madison," Olivia said softly, "I'm the one being cheated on and robbed. What kind of trap could I possibly set for you?" She hung up before Madison could answer, and then she sat back, one hand on her belly, and let out a long, shaking breath because her heart was pounding so hard she was afraid the baby could feel it. "That's step 1, sweetheart," she whispered. "Now I just have to survive step 2. 6 days before the signing, the morning of the meeting, Olivia did 3 things before she left the house. First, she called Harold and told him exactly where she was going and exactly when, and told him that if he did not hear from her by 2 o'clock, he was to call a specific lawyer whose number she gave him, a woman named Diane Foster, who had once worked with Olivia years ago and owed her a favor. Second, she took the folder. The whole folder, every document and screenshot and diagram, and she uploaded a copy of it to a secure account, and she wrote down the password and sealed it in an envelope and gave it to no one, but placed it somewhere safe, because a woman about to walk into the same room as her enemy makes sure the truth survives, even if she does not. And third, before she left, she turned on the voice recorder on a small second phone, an old one, and she slipped it into the inside pocket of her coat. Because Madison Blake thought she was meeting a defeated wife. Madison Blake had no idea she was meeting a woman who had spent 7 years being underestimated by smarter people than her and had learned to make it a weapon. The cafe on Wren Street was crowded exactly as Olivia had wanted. Madison was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table, and Olivia's first thought seeing her in person was that she was younger than she'd expected. Younger and harder. There was a coolness in her eyes that no amount of beauty could soften. "Mrs. Caldwell," Madison said, rising slightly. "Olivia, please." Olivia lowered herself carefully into the chair. "Mrs. Caldwell makes me feel like my mother-in-law." Madison did not smile. "You said you had a proposal." "I do." Olivia folded her hands on the table. "But first, I want to say something, and I want you to hear it. I'm not angry at you, Madison. I really am not. I'm angry at Ethan. You didn't make vows to me. He did. So whatever happens here, I don't hate you. I want you to know that." Madison studied her wary. "That's very mature," she said slowly. "I've had weeks to be mature about it," Olivia said. "Now, here's my proposal. I know about you and Ethan. I have proof. Photos, messages, the whole thing. I could use it. I could blow all of this up. Confront him, humiliate him, drag it through a divorce." She paused. "But I don't want to do that. I'm about to have a baby, Madison. I don't want a war. I want a clean exit. I want to walk away with my child and enough to raise her, and I want to never see Ethan again." Something flickered in Madison's eyes. Interest. Go on, Madison said. So here's what I'm offering. I keep quiet. I don't tell Ethan I know. I don't fight the divorce. I don't make trouble for you or for whatever business you and Ethan have going. Olivia watched her face very carefully as she said the next part. In exchange, I want reassurance. I want to know that when this is all done, when whatever you and Vance are working toward is finished, that there will be something left for me and my daughter. That's all. I don't care about the company. I don't care about Ethan's precious empire. I just want to know my child is safe. And there it was, the moment, because Olivia had said 2 words she was never supposed to know. Vance. And whatever you and Vance are working toward. And she watched Madison Blake hear those words, and she watched the exact instant Madison realized that this pregnant, tired, defeated wife knew more than a defeated wife should know. Madison's face did not move, but her hand did. Her hand went still on her coffee cup, too still, the stillness of a predator that has just heard a twig snap. I don't know what you mean by Vance, Madison said carefully. Olivia held her gaze, and then Olivia made the boldest gamble of her entire life. Yes, you do, she said quietly. And I think you and I both know that if I wanted to make trouble, I could. I know about the restructuring, Madison. I know what those signatures mean. I know that in 6 days, Gerald Vance is going to own my husband's company, and Ethan doesn't even realize it yet. She let that sink in. So don't insult me by pretending. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you I understand the game, and I want out of it cleanly before it gets ugly. I want to be paid to disappear. That's the whole proposal. For a long moment, Madison said nothing, and Olivia's heart was hammering so hard she thought it would give her away because everything hung on the next thing this woman decided to do. If Madison stood up and walked out, Olivia had failed, and worse, she had warned them. But if Madison believed her, if Madison believed she was talking to a woman who understood the con and simply wanted her cut, a fellow pragmatist, a woman as cold as herself, then Madison would relax. And people who relax talk. Slowly, Madison leaned back in her chair, and something changed in her face. The wariness did not disappear, but it shifted. It became something almost like respect. You know, Madison said quietly, he told me you were sweet, a little naive, the good girl who saved his company back in the day. He said you'd never see any of this coming. Olivia felt her stomach turn to ice, but she kept her face perfectly still. Ethan says a lot of things, she said. Madison laughed softly. He does. He really does. She took a sip of her coffee. You're smarter than he thinks. A lot smarter. Honestly, if he'd paid half as much attention to you as he pays to his own reflection, none of this would have worked. And Olivia knew in that sentence that she had won the first battle, because Madison had just admitted in her own careless, contemptuous way that the affair was a tool. None of this would have worked. This, the scheme, the con, the theft. But Olivia needed more. She needed it plain. So we understand each other, Olivia said. Maybe we do. Madison tilted her head. But I'm not the one you'd need to talk to about a payout. That's not my department. I'm just the... She smiled thinly, the closer. The closer, Olivia repeated. I get the signatures, Madison said. That's my specialty. Vance handles the money. Vance decides who gets what. She shrugged, so casual, so certain she was among her own kind now. The Denver job, that's how it worked too. I get them comfortable, they sign, Vance cleans up. Same as always. You want a piece, you talk to Vance. But I'll tell you right now, he doesn't leave pieces for anybody. That's not how he does it. When it's done, it's done. Ethan will wake up one morning and it'll all be gone and it'll all be legal because he signed every single page himself while he was busy telling me about his terrible marriage. She said it lightly. She said it the way a person tells a story about someone they have already stopped thinking of as human. And in the inside pocket of Olivia's coat, a small phone recorded every word. Olivia's whole body wanted to shake, but she did not let it. She had one more thing to get one last piece, and she made her voice curious, almost admiring the voice of a woman impressed by a professional. Denver, she said, that was you too. Everyone thinks you and Vance just met. Madison smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had gotten away with something for so long. She'd forgotten to be afraid of talking about it. Vance and I have been doing this for 6 years, she said. Ethan's number 4. He's the biggest. He's also the easiest, honestly, and you can tell him I said that. She checked her watch, that same casual gesture. "Look, I have to go. I actually do have to be somewhere. But I like you, Olivia. I do. So here's some free advice, woman to woman. Take whatever settlement Ethan's lawyers offer in the divorce and get out fast. Don't try to fight for the company. There won't be a company. There'll just be Vance. And you do not want to be standing between Gerald Vance and money." She gathered her coat. "Send Vance my regards," Olivia said quietly. Madison paused, looked at her, and for just a second something crossed her face, some flicker of a feeling she probably hadn't felt in years. "You're carrying a kid," Madison said. "I'll tell you one true thing before I go, and then I'm done. I'm not a good person, I know that. But I wasn't always this. Once upon a time, somebody smarter than me talked me into my first job, and I told myself it was just one time, and here I am 6 lives later." She looked at Olivia's belly. "Don't let anybody talk your kid into their first job. That's the only advice worth anything." And then she walked out. Olivia sat at the table for a long time after she was gone. She did not move. She was afraid that if she moved, her legs would not hold her. Because she had it. She had all of it. The confession, Vance, the scheme, the Denver job. 6 years, 4 victims. The affair as a weapon. Madison had said it all on tape in her own bored, careless voice. Slowly, Olivia reached into her coat and touched the small phone just to be sure it was still there, still recording, still real. It was. "We got him, sweetheart," she whispered to her daughter, and her voice broke on the last word. "We got all of them." 5 days before the signing, Olivia met Diane Foster, the lawyer, that same night in Diane's office, and she played the recording and she laid out the folder, and Diane Foster, who had seen a great many things in 20 years of practice, sat in complete silence until it was over, and then she took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "Olivia," Diane said, "in 2 decades I have never seen a civilian build a case like this. Never. You understand what you have here. Tell me." "You have a recorded confession to a conspiracy to commit fraud referencing multiple prior victims, tying the personal relationship directly to the corporate scheme. You have documentary evidence of the transfer structure. You have the pattern, the Denver case, which means we can find those victims, and they will talk." "Olivia, this isn't a divorce case. This is a criminal case. This could put Gerald Vance and Madison Blake in prison." Olivia let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for weeks. "Then we can stop the signing." "We can do a lot more than stop the signing." Diane leaned forward. "But Olivia, I have to ask you something, and I need you to think about it before you answer because it's the most important question in all of this." She paused. "What about Ethan?" Olivia went still. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Diane said gently, "that legally Ethan is the victim here. It's his company being stolen. But Olivia, think about how this looks. Think about what he's done. He's been having an affair for months. He's been signing away his company in a fog of vanity. And when this breaks, when this becomes a criminal case, it is going to be public, very public. And the story the world hears is going to be about a billionaire who was so busy cheating on his pregnant wife that he handed his empire to con artists." She let that sit. "You have the power here, Olivia. Complete power. You can use this evidence to save him, or you can use it to save yourself and let him fall. And I need to know which one you want because they're 2 very different strategies, and we only have 5 days." And there it was, the question Olivia had not let herself ask out loud in all these weeks. Did she want to save Ethan? She thought about the messages, grown apart, married too young. She thought about the coffee she'd handed him every morning with shaking hands. She thought about the phone turned face down. She thought about a man who had looked at her, his pregnant wife, and told a stranger she was a good woman, and then she thought about something else. She thought about a young man crying in a leaking office the day their company survived its first year, whispering, "We did it, just us." She thought about the inheritance. She had sold the land she had given up because she had believed in that man completely. That man was worth saving, but the man he had become was not. "Diane," Olivia said slowly, "I need to think about it. But I already know part of the answer." "Which part?" "I'm not going to decide whether to save Ethan." Olivia looked up, and there was something in her eyes that made even Diane Foster pause. "Ethan is going to decide, I've spent 7 years making his choices easy for him, fixing his mistakes before he saw them, softening every landing. Well, not this time. This time he's going to have to stand in front of the truth with nothing to protect him, and he's going to have to choose what kind of man he actually is. And whatever he chooses, that's what I'll build the rest of my strategy around. Diane looked at her for a long moment. "You're going to tell him," she said. "You're going to confront him with all of it." "Yes." When Olivia thought about the number that had lived behind her eyes for weeks, 5 days. She thought about the rainy nights, the dark house, the 7 words she had been holding on to like a blade she was waiting to unsheath. "Soon," she said, "but not before I know exactly what I'm going to say, and not before I have every piece where it needs to be. Because, Diane, when I confront him, it can't just be an accusation. It has to be a doorway. It has to be a thing he can walk through toward being better, or a thing he can turn away from toward being worse. And either way, I have to be ready for what he chooses." 4 days before the signing, Olivia spent those days doing something that surprised even her. She did not spend them raging. She spent them remembering. She went into the old boxes in the back of the closet, the ones from before the money, and she found the photographs. The 2 of them at 25, broke and grinning. The first tiny office. The handwritten sign Ethan had made for their first door because they couldn't afford a real one. She found the deed papers from her grandmother's land. The land she had sold, the papers she had kept all these years, even though she'd never told him. And she laid it all out on the bed. The whole history of them, the whole ruined, beautiful thing. And she sat there with her hand on her belly, and she let herself feel for the last time everything she had loved about the man she married. Because she understood something now that had taken her weeks to learn. The confrontation coming was not just about justice. It was not just about the company or the crime or the divorce. It was the last conversation she would ever have with Ethan as his wife. Whatever came after, they would never be these 2 people again. And she wanted to walk into it clear-eyed, without hatred, holding both truths at once. That he had betrayed her completely, and that she had loved him completely. And that both of those things could be true, and that a person had to be very strong to hold them both without letting go of either. On the 4th night, Ethan came home late again, and he found her sitting up the photographs put away, the house quiet. "You're still awake," he said, loosening his tie. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Olivia said. "I was just thinking about the old apartment, the one on Delmore Street. Do you remember it?" Ethan smiled, surprised. "God, Delmore Street. The heater that never worked. Why are you thinking about that?" "I don't know," Olivia said softly. "Sometimes I miss who we were then. We had nothing, but you used to look at me like I was the only thing in the world worth looking at." Ethan's smile faltered. Just for a second, something moved behind his eyes. Some old ghost, some flicker of the man he used to be. And for that 1 second, Olivia saw him, the real him, the one who was still in there somewhere buried under 7 years of applause and mirrors. "I still look at you like that," Ethan said, and it was such a perfect, practiced lie delivered so smoothly that Olivia almost admired it. "No, Ethan," she said gently. "You don't. But it's all right. You will. Very soon you're going to look at me and really see me for the first time in years." Ethan frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" Olivia stood slowly, one hand on the small of her back, and she crossed to him and did something she had not done in weeks. She reached up and touched his face the way she used to back on Delmore Street. "It means I love you," she said. "It means I have loved you since I was 24 years old, and I gave up more than you will ever know to keep you, and none of that is going to matter after this week, but I need you to have heard me say it once clearly before everything changes. So there, I said it. I love you, Ethan Caldwell, and I am so sorry for what's coming." Ethan stared at her, and for the first time in months, real fear crossed his face. The fear of a man who senses a foundation shifting beneath him, but cannot yet see the crack. "Olivia," he said slowly, "what's going on? You're scaring me." She looked at him, her husband, her betrayer, the father of her child, the man she had saved once and would never save the same way again. "Go to bed, Ethan," she said quietly. "You have a big week ahead of you, bigger than you know." and she walked past him down the hall and closed the bedroom door, leaving him standing alone in the dark of the house he did not know he'd already lost while 3 days away in his office, and hers. The final papers waited to be signed, and the woman he had underestimated for 7 years lay awake with her hand on their daughter, counting down the hours until she would finally speak the 7 words that would bring his entire world crashing down. 3 days before the signing, everything Olivia had planned so carefully began to move faster than she could control. It started with a phone call at 6 in the morning. Not to Olivia, to Ethan. She heard it through the wall, his voice rising sharp and confused, and she lay very still and listened. "What do you mean, moved up Vance? We agreed on Friday. Why are we signing tomorrow?" A pause. "No, I understand that, but I have questions about the last 3 documents I told you I wanted my own people to look at." Another pause, longer this time. Fine, tomorrow. But Gerald, I'm telling you, if there's anything in those papers I don't like, I'm not signing anything." Olivia sat up in bed slowly. Tomorrow, not 3 days. Tomorrow. They had moved it again. Her heart began to pound. Diane needed time. The lawyers needed time. The whole strategy, everything she had built, depended on stopping the signing before it happened. And now the signing was tomorrow, and she had less than 30 hours. And worst of all, some small, terrible part of her wondered if they had moved it because they somehow knew she had met Madison. She got up, she got dressed, and by the time Ethan came into the kitchen, tense and distracted, she was already pouring his coffee, her face calm, her hands steady, a performance she had perfected over weeks. "You're up early," Ethan said. "The baby doesn't care what time it is," Olivia said lightly. "Everything okay? I heard you on the phone." Ethan hesitated. And for a moment, Olivia saw something she had not seen in him in a long time. Doubt. "It's the deal with Vance," he said, finally sitting down. "The restructuring. They moved the signing to tomorrow. And I don't know, Liv. Something feels off about it. He's rushing me. Every time I ask to have my own lawyer review the final documents, he's got a reason we don't have time." He rubbed his face. "Am I being paranoid?" And Olivia stood there, coffee pot in hand, and understood that the universe had just handed her a moment she had never expected. He was doubting. On his own, without her pushing. Some instinct, some buried piece of the sharp young man he used to be was waking up and whispering that something was wrong. She could use this. She could nudge him toward the doubt. She could plant a seed. But she did not, because she had made a decision days ago, and she held to it. She was not going to make his choice for him. She was going to make him stand in front of the whole truth and choose. And that meant she could not rescue him with hints the day before. It had to be all of it or nothing. "I think," Olivia said carefully, "that you should trust your instincts. You built this company by trusting your instincts. If something feels wrong, don't let anyone rush you." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "That's it. No, you work too hard, take it easy." "You're a grown man, Ethan," Olivia said. "You don't need me to tell you what to do. You know what to do. The only question is whether you'll actually listen to yourself." And she set down the coffee and walked away, leaving him staring after her, unsettled, because that had not sounded like his sweet, naive wife at all. The moment he left for the office, Olivia called Diane Foster. "They moved the signing to tomorrow," she said. "Diane, we're out of time. What do we do?" There was a pause, then Diane's voice, calm and fast. "Then we move today. Olivia, listen to me. We have 2 options. Option 1, we go to the authorities right now with what we have and we let them handle it. But that's slow. Even with the recording opening a criminal case, getting an injunction to stop the signing that takes days we don't have. Option 2, she paused. Option 2 is faster and it's riskier and it depends entirely on Ethan." "Tell me." "We stop the signing from the inside. If Ethan refuses to sign tomorrow, there's no deal. It's that simple. All those previous signatures, they set up the transfer, but the final document, the one that actually hands Vance control, Ethan still has to sign that one himself. If he walks out of that room without signing, the whole thing collapses, and then we have all the time in the world to go to the police." Diane took a breath. "But that means telling Ethan everything. Today. Before tomorrow's meeting. It means you have to confront him, convince him, and turn him against Vance and Madison all in the next 24 hours. And Olivia, if he doesn't believe you, if he defends them, if he goes to Madison and warns her, then they'll destroy the evidence and run, Olivia finished quietly. Yes. Olivia closed her eyes. There it was. The gamble she had been building toward for weeks had just collapsed into a single day. Everything now depended on one conversation, the conversation she had been rehearsing in the dark for so long. "Then I'll tell him tonight," she said, "when he comes home." "Do you want me there?" Olivia thought about it. "No," she said. "This part I have to do alone. But Diane, I want you ready. The moment he agrees to fight, the second he's on our side, I want you moving. Police injunction, everything. Because once Vance realizes Ethan isn't going to sign, this is going to become very dangerous very fast." "I'll be ready," Diane said. "Olivia, good luck. And be careful. Men like Vance don't lose money quietly." The day before the signing crawled by like the longest day of Olivia's life. She could not eat. She could not rest. She walked the house, one hand on her belly, rehearsing. She thought about every possible way the conversation could go. Ethan denying it, Ethan raging, Ethan crumbling, Ethan running to Madison. She built a plan for each one, and underneath all of it a fear she could not name kept rising, because she knew that no matter how much she prepared, the truth was that she did not actually know what her husband would do when the mirror finally shattered. 7 years of marriage, and she genuinely did not know whether the man she'd wake up next to tonight was still capable of choosing right. At 4 p.m, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered. Olivia Caldwell. A man's voice. Smooth, cold, older. Speaking. "My name is Gerald Vance. I believe you've met my associate, Madison Blake." Olivia's blood turned to ice. She had to grip the edge of the counter to stay standing. Vance. Vance was calling her, which meant Madison had told him about the meeting, which meant they knew. "Mr. Vance," Olivia said, and she was amazed her voice did not shake. "This is unexpected." "I'm sure it is." She could hear the smile in his voice, and there was nothing warm in it. "Madison mentioned your little conversation. She was quite impressed with you, actually. She said you were smart. I told her that's a problem. Smart wives are always a problem." Olivia forced herself to breathe. "What do you want, Mr. Vance?" "I want to save us all a great deal of trouble," Vance said. "You see Olivia tomorrow morning, your husband is going to sign some papers. And after he does, he's going to be a much less wealthy man, and you're going to be a divorced woman with a newborn and no fortune. That's the deal. That's already done. Nothing you do in the next 18 hours is going to change that." "Then why are you calling me?" "Because I'm a businessman," Vance said. "And I don't like loose ends. Madison told you some things she shouldn't have. She gets careless when she's bored. So I'm calling to make you an offer. A real one this time. Stay quiet. Don't say a word to Ethan. Let him sign tomorrow. And when it's done, there'll be an account with your name on it. Enough to raise your daughter comfortably for the rest of her life. Consider it a professional courtesy from one careful person to another." And Olivia understood in that moment that Vance did not know how much she had. He knew Madison had talked, but he thought it was loose lips at a cafe. He did not know about the recording. He did not know about the folder. He did not know about Harold or Diane or the copy of everything sitting locked in a secure account. He thought he was buying the silence of a scared pregnant woman with no proof. He had no idea he was talking to the woman who was about to end him. And so Olivia did the only smart thing. She played the part he expected. "How much, Bow?" she said, letting her voice waver, letting a little fear leak in. "How much would the account have?" She heard Vance's satisfaction, that little exhale of a man who has just confirmed that everyone in the end has a price. "Now you're being sensible," he said. "We'll discuss the number after the signing. For now, all you have to do is nothing. Can you do nothing for 18 hours, Olivia?" Yes," Olivia said. "I can do that. For my daughter, yes." "Good girl," Vance said, and the 2 words made Olivia's skin crawl, the same words Madison had used, the words these people used for anyone they thought they'd successfully bought. "I'll be in touch, and Olivia, don't be clever. Clever is how people get hurt." The line went dead. Olivia set the phone down very carefully. And then she stood in the kitchen and shook, actually shook for a full minute, because she had just realized how much more dangerous this was than she had understood. This was not just a con. Vance had threatened her. Don't be clever. Clever is how people get hurt. That was not a businessman's line. That was something else. And then when the shaking stopped, something hardened in her that had not been there before. Because Gerald Vance had just made a mistake. He had called her. He had threatened her. And in doing so, he had told her something crucial. He was nervous. A man who was truly certain he had already won would not bother to buy off a wife with no proof. Vance was hedging. Vance was covering a loose end, which meant Vance was not as sure as he pretended. And a nervous enemy makes mistakes. She called Diane immediately and told her about the call. Diane was quiet for a long moment. "Olivia," she said, "that changes things. If Vance is calling you directly and using language like that, this man is more dangerous than a white-collar fraud. I want you to promise me something. The second Ethan agrees to fight you, and Ethan do not stay in that house. You go somewhere safe. Do you understand me?" "I understand." "I mean it. I've seen these cases. When millions are on the line and the deal falls apart, people do desperate things. Promise me." "I promise," Olivia said. "Diane, just be ready. Tonight is everything." Ethan came home at 8 that night, and Olivia was waiting for him. Not in the bedroom, not pretending to be asleep. She was sitting in the living room in the armchair by the window, exactly the way she had been sitting on the night this all began weeks ago, when he'd come home at 1:30 and she'd let him lie to her face. But tonight on the table beside her, there was a folder. Ethan came in and he saw her, and he saw the folder, and something in the air made him stop in the doorway. "Olivia," he said slowly. "What's this?" "Sit down, Ethan," she said quietly. "We need to talk. And it's going to be the most important conversation of your entire life. So please, sit down." He didn't move. "You're scaring me again. You've been strange all week. What is going on?" "Sit down." Something in her voice, some steel he had never heard from her in 7 years, made him obey. He crossed the room slowly and sat on the edge of the sofa across from her, his eyes moving between her face and the folder. For a long moment, Olivia said nothing. She just looked at him. And then she spoke the words she had been holding on to for weeks, the words she had rehearsed 1,000 times in the dark, the words that would end the man he was. "I know everything, Ethan," she said, "about Madison, but you don't know what I found about you." Ethan went completely white. "Olivia," he started, "I don't whatever you think you—" "Don't," she said, and it was not loud, but it stopped him cold. "Don't lie to me. Not tonight. You've been lying to me for months, and I've let you because I needed you to keep lying while I found out how deep it went. So don't waste the little time we have insulting me with one more lie. I know about Madison. I've known for weeks. I know about the dinners, the messages, all of it." She paused. "I know you told her you married too young. I know you told her I was a good woman, but—" Ethan's face collapsed. Every excuse he had rehearsed on the drive home died in his throat because he could see in her eyes that she had it all, that there was no version of this where he talked his way out. "Olivia," he whispered, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I don't even—" "Stop," Olivia said. "Because here's the thing, Ethan. I didn't ask you to sit down to talk about the affair. The affair is the smallest part of tonight. I could almost forgive the affair. Almost. What I need you to understand right now is that the affair was never the real betrayal. The affair was the weapon they used to commit a much bigger one." Ethan stared at her confused, the guilt on his face slowly giving way to something else. Fear. "What are you talking about?" he said. "What weapon? Who's they?" Olivia reached over and opened the folder. "Madison Blake doesn't love you, Ethan," she said. "She never did. She was never attracted to you. She was assigned to you. She's a professional. She and Gerald Vance have been running the same scheme for 6 years. You are the 4th man they've done this to. There was one in Denver 3 years ago. He lost everything just like you're about to." "That's insane," Ethan said, but his voice cracked. "Olivia Vance is my partner. We're about to close the biggest deal of my—" "You're not closing a deal," Olivia said. "You're signing away your company. That's what tomorrow's meeting is. That's what all those documents you've been signing for months have been building toward. Every signature transferred a little more control to Vance. And tomorrow, the last one hands him everything. When you sign tomorrow morning, Ethan, you will walk out of that room no longer owning the company you built. And it will all be legal. because you signed every single page yourself while you were busy telling Madison about your terrible marriage. Ethan was shaking his head, but his eyes had gone to the folder to the documents, and Olivia watched him begin to read, and she watched the exact moment the world started to fall out from under him. "These are," he said, "this is the restructuring, but this clause, this transfers." He flipped a page. His hands were trembling now. No, this isn't right. Vance said this was about tax efficiency. He said, "He lied to you, Ethan," Olivia said gently, "the way you lied to me. The way Madison lied to you. Everyone in your life has been lying to you for months, and the only person telling you the truth is the wife you decided wasn't worth looking at anymore." Ethan looked up from the papers, and his face was the face of a man watching his entire life burn. "How do you know all this?" he whispered. "How could you possibly, Olivia? How do you have these documents?" "Because I've spent every night for the last 6 weeks building this folder while you were out with Madison," Olivia said. "Because I went to Harold, the accountant you fired. Because I sold my grandmother's land 7 years ago to save your company, Ethan, and I'll be damned if I let a con artist steal it after everything I gave up to keep it alive." That stopped him. "You what?" Ethan said. "Your grandmother's land. You told me that money was a loan." "It was never a loan," Olivia said, and for the first time her voice trembled. "There was no loan, Ethan. When the company was dying that first year, when we were about to lose everything I sold, the only thing my family had left. 100 years of my grandmother's land. I sold it, and I put every cent into your company, and I told you it was a loan because I knew your pride couldn't survive, knowing your wife had bled her own family to save your dream. I have carried that secret for 7 years. I have watched you build an empire on the back of my family's history, and I have never once asked for credit, because I loved you, and because I believed in you, and because I thought that was what partners did." She wiped her eyes, angry at herself for the tears. "And this year, I watched you throw all of it, everything I sacrificed, into the lap of a woman who was paid to smile at you. So yes, Ethan, I know everything. Because I have been the only person actually fighting for this family while you've been busy destroying it." The room was completely silent. Ethan sat with the documents in his hands, and Olivia watched something break in him, something fundamental, the great and terrible certainty that had ruled his whole life, the belief that he was the smartest man in every room that he had built, everything himself, that he was untouchable. It shattered. And what was left sitting on the sofa in the ruins of it was just a frightened man who had hurt the one person who had ever truly been on his side. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Olivia, what did I do? What did I do to you? To us?" And here was the moment, the one Olivia had been building toward for weeks, the moment she had refused to decide for him. She had brought him to the edge of the truth, and now he had to choose what kind of man he was going to be. She could see him wanting to collapse, wanting to drown in the guilt and the shock, and she needed him not to. "Ethan," she said sharply, "look at me." He looked up. "You do not get to fall apart right now," she said. "You do not get the luxury of your own guilt tonight. Do you understand me? There will be time for that later. Right now, tomorrow morning, in less than 12 hours, you are supposed to walk into a room and sign away everything. And I did not spend 6 weeks of my pregnancy building this folder so that you could sit on my sofa and feel sorry for yourself. So I need you to make a decision. Right now. Are you going to be the man who lies down and lets them take it? Or are you going to help me stop them?" Ethan stared at her, and slowly something changed in his face. The shock was still there. The guilt was still there. But underneath it, something else began to rise, something Olivia had not seen in years, the thing that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. A fighter. A fire. "Stop them," he said hoarsely. "How, Olivia? If these documents are real, if it's all legal, how do we stop them?" "You don't sign," Olivia said simply. "That's it. That's the whole thing. If you walk into that room tomorrow and refuse to sign the final document, the deal collapses. And then—" She reached into her coat and pulled out the small phone, the old one, and set it on the table between them. "Then we give this to the police." "What is that?" "That," Olivia said, "is Madison Blake confessing to the entire scheme. 6 years. 4 victims, Denver, all of it, in her own voice. I recorded her yesterday at a cafe on Wren Street when I got her to believe I wanted a cut of the money." Ethan looked at the phone, then at his wife, and on his face was an expression Olivia had waited 7 years to see again, and had almost given up on ever seeing. Awe. "You did that," he said. "You got Madison Blake to confess, while you're 8 months pregnant, while I was—" His voice broke. "While I was lying to you." "I did that," Olivia said. "Olivia." Ethan slid off the sofa, and to her shock, he knelt on the floor in front of her, and he took her hand, and he pressed it to his forehead, and his shoulders shook. "I don't deserve you. I have never deserved you. I looked at everything I had, and I still went looking for more, and you were the more. You were always the more, and I was too stupid and too vain to see it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And Olivia, who had promised herself she would not cry, who had done all her crying, already felt the tears come anyway, because there he was, finally the man from Delmore Street kneeling on the floor of the mansion his own pride had nearly destroyed. "I know you're sorry," she said softly, resting her free hand on his hair. "And I need you to hear something. Ethan and I need you to really hear it, because I'm only going to say it once." She lifted his chin so he was looking at her. "Being sorry is not enough. Being sorry doesn't rebuild anything. You broke something in me that may never fully heal. You broke a trust I gave you completely, and no matter what happens tomorrow, that is broken now, and I don't know if it can ever be what it was." She paused. "But what you do next, starting right now tonight, is going to tell me whether the man I fell in love with is still in there, or whether he died somewhere in the last 7 years and left this stranger behind. So get up, wipe your face, and let's go to war." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and then he stood. "Okay," he said, and his voice was different now, steadier, harder. "Okay, tell me the plan. Tell me everything. I'm all in." For the next 2 hours they worked, side by side at the Marble Island the way they used to work in the old days on Delmore Street, back when it was just the two of them against the world. Olivia laid out everything. The folder, the recording, Harold, Diane Foster, the plan to refuse the signing and go to the police the moment Ethan walked out of that room. And Ethan, sharp again, awake again, added things Olivia couldn't have known. Which documents were most damning? What Vance had said in private meetings. A backup server where copies of the real agreements were stored, which Diane could subpoena. At one point, Ethan stopped and looked at his wife across the table, and he said, "You could have just let me fall. You had all of this. You could have taken the recording to the police, divorced me, walked away, and let Vance and Madison and me all go down together. Why didn't you? After everything I did, why are you helping me?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Because of her," she said, and put her hand on her belly. "Because someday she's going to ask about her father. And I need to be able to tell her the truth. And I decided weeks ago that I wanted the truth to be that when everything fell apart, her father finally chose right." She looked at him. "I'm not saving you, Ethan. Understand that. I gave you the chance to save yourself. There's a difference. And you're not out of the woods with me, not by a long way. But you took the chance, and that matters." Ethan nodded slowly, and there was a humility in him now that had never been there before. "Then I won't waste it," he said. At 11 o'clock, Olivia's phone rang. Diane Foster. "Olivia," Diane said, and her voice was tight. "We have a problem." Olivia's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Vance moved money tonight, a lot of it. My contact at the bank flagged it an hour ago. He's liquidating and shifting funds offshore. Olivia, I think he's not waiting for tomorrow's signing. I think something spooked him tonight, and I think he's planning to run." Olivia looked at Ethan. "Diane," she said slowly, "did Vance call anyone tonight? Can your contact see that?" A pause, keys clicking. Then Diane's voice careful. "There's a call log flag. He made a call around 4 this afternoon, to a number that traces back to—" She stopped. "Olivia, it traces back to your cell phone. He called you." "He called me," Olivia confirmed. "He offered me money to stay quiet, and I let him think I took the deal." "Then he thinks you're bought," Diane said. "So why would he be running tonight?" And in that moment, Olivia felt the floor tilt beneath her, because there was only one answer, and it meant that something had gone wrong that she could not see. "Because someone told him I wasn't," Olivia said slowly. "Someone told him I'm not bought. Someone told him I'm still fighting." She looked at Ethan and her voice dropped to almost nothing. "Ethan, who did you talk to tonight before you came home? Think. Anyone. Did you call anyone, text anyone?" Ethan's face went pale. "Madison," he whispered. "I texted Madison this afternoon, before I knew any of this. I told her—" He swallowed. "I told her I was having second thoughts about the deal, that I wanted to slow things down. I told her I trusted her and I wanted her honest opinion about whether I should sign tomorrow." Olivia closed her eyes. "So Madison told Vance you were getting cold feet," she said. "And Vance already knew I was asking questions. And he put it together. He thinks we're both on to him now. That's why he's running." She opened her eyes. "Ethan, he's not going to wait for you to refuse to sign tomorrow. He already knows the deal is dead. So right now tonight, he's doing exactly what Diane warned me about. He's destroying evidence and moving the money where we can't reach it. And if he gets it offshore before the police can freeze it, then there's nothing to recover," Ethan finished, horrified. "Even if we prove everything the money's gone, my company's already been stripped in the earlier transfers. If he moves the assets tonight—" "Diane," Olivia said into the phone, standing now, her heart pounding, "how long until those funds are untouchable?" "Hours," Diane said grimly. "Maybe less. Once it clears the offshore accounts, it's gone. Olivia, if you want to stop this, we can't wait for morning. We have to move tonight, right now. We have to go to the police with everything this hour and get an emergency freeze before Vance finishes the transfer." Olivia looked at Ethan, and Ethan looked back at her. And in that moment, the whole careful plan, the plan to calmly refuse the signing in the morning, the plan that had given them until dawn, evaporated. It was happening now. Tonight, in the dark, with a dangerous man moving money and a recording that could save them and a clock running out by the minute. "Then we go now," Olivia said. "Diane, meet us at the precinct. Bring everything. We're leaving the house this second." She grabbed her coat. She grabbed the folder. She grabbed the small phone with Madison's confession on it. And as Ethan pulled the car around as the rain began to fall again on Lake Michigan, Olivia Caldwell, 8 months pregnant, stepped out into the night to try to outrun a criminal's getaway and save what was left of the empire her own inheritance had built, not knowing that Gerald Vance had made one final call that evening and that the person he had called was already waiting for them in the dark. The person Gerald Vance had called was standing beside a black car at the end of the Caldwell driveway, and when the garage door opened and Ethan's headlights swept across the dark, the figure did not move. It was Madison Blake. Ethan hit the brakes so hard that Olivia's hand flew to her belly. "That's her," Ethan said, his voice low and tight. "That's Madison. What is she doing here?" "Don't stop," Olivia said. "Ethan, do not stop the car. Drive around her." But there was no room. The driveway was narrow, and Madison had parked her car sideways across the mouth of it, blocking the exit completely. And now she was walking toward them, unhurried, her hands visible and empty, her face calm in the glow of the headlights. Ethan rolled down his window an inch. "Madison, move your car." "Ethan," Madison said, and her voice was different than Olivia remembered from the cafe. Quieter, almost sad. "We need to talk, all three of us, right now, before you do something that gets you both killed." Olivia's blood ran cold. "Killed?" Ethan said. "What are you talking about?" Madison glanced up and down the empty street, and something in the gesture, something nervous and quick, told Olivia that this was not part of any plan Vance had made. This was Madison alone doing something on her own. "Vance knows," Madison said. "He knows you're both going to the police. He knows about the recording, Olivia. I don't know how, but he knows. And he is not a man who goes to prison quietly. He has people, the kind of people who make problems disappear before they ever reach a courtroom. And right now, tonight, he has decided that the two of you are a problem." She swallowed. "I came to warn you, because whatever I am, whatever I've done, I am not going to stand by and watch him hurt a pregnant woman. So please, both of you, get out of the car and come with me, because there is a car coming to this house in the next 20 minutes, and you do not want to be here when it arrives." Ethan looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at Madison, and the whole world seemed to hang on a knife's edge. "Why should we believe you?" Olivia said. You've done nothing but lie. You lied to Ethan for months. You confessed to me at that cafe thinking I was as corrupt as you are. Now you show up in the middle of the night telling us we're in danger. Give me one reason to trust a single word out of your mouth." Madison was quiet for a moment. "Because I told you the truth at the cafe too," she said. "I told you not to let anybody talk your kid into their first job. I meant that. I've spent 6 years being the person who ruins people's lives so Vance can take their money. And you—" She looked at Olivia, and there was something raw in her face now. "You're the first Mark's wife who ever looked me in the eye and treated me like a human being instead of a monster. You didn't scream at me. You didn't call me a whore. You just said you didn't hate me, and I've been sick about it ever since. So no, you have no reason to trust me. But I'm here anyway at 2 a.m, betraying the most dangerous man I know to warn you. Believe that or don't, but decide fast, because the clock is running." For one long, terrible second, nobody moved, and then Olivia made a decision. "Ethan," she said quietly, "call Diane, right now. Put her on speaker." Ethan dialed. Diane answered on the first ring. "Olivia, where are you? I'm at the precinct. I have the detectives standing by. Where are—" "Diane," Olivia said, "Madison Blake is standing in my driveway. She says Vance knows about the recording and he's sending people to the house to stop us, to hurt us. She says we have less than 20 minutes. Olivia's voice was steady, but her hand had not left her belly. "I need you to tell me right now, is that possible? Is that the kind of thing this man would do?" There was a pause on the line, and when Diane spoke again, her voice had changed completely. All the courtroom calm was gone. "Olivia listened to me very carefully," Diane said. "2 of Vance's 4 previous victims, the ones I told you about the pattern I did more digging today. One of them, the man in Denver, didn't just lose his company. 8 months after the fraud, he died. Officially, it was a car accident. But the case was strange enough that a journalist looked into it and got nowhere because every witness suddenly stopped talking." Diane's voice dropped. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to frighten you, and I wasn't sure. But if Madison Blake is standing in your driveway telling you to run, then you run. You get out of there. You get somewhere public, somewhere with cameras and people, and you call the police to escort you in. Do not stay in that house. Do you understand me? Go, now." The line went silent, and Olivia understood in that frozen moment that this had never been just about money. A man had died. The gentle white-collar crime she thought she was fighting had a body under it. And now she and her unborn daughter and her husband were standing in the exact spot where the next accident was scheduled to happen. "Get in the car," Olivia said to Madison. "You're coming with us. You're our witness, and I am not leaving you here to change your mind or warn Vance. Ethan, back up. We go out the service road behind the house." "There's a gate," Ethan said. "It's locked. I don't have—" "I do," Olivia said. "I've had the code for years. You never knew because you never used it. Back up. Go." Ethan threw the car into reverse. Madison climbed into the back seat, and they tore around the side of the house toward the service road as the rain came down harder, and Olivia punched a code into her phone that triggered the back gate, and it swung open, and they shot through it onto a dark side street just as behind them a pair of headlights turned into the mouth of the main driveway they had just fled. "That's them," Madison said, twisting to look back. "That's Vance's people. Go. Go, don't stop, get to the highway." Ethan drove. Nobody spoke for a full minute. The only sound was the rain and the engine and Olivia's own breathing, which she was fighting to keep slow and even because she could feel her heart racing, and she knew that stress, real stress, was the one thing the doctor had told her over and over to avoid, the one thing that could put the baby at risk. And then, in the dark of the car, it happened. A pain. Low and deep and wrong. It wrapped around Olivia's belly like a fist and squeezed, and she gasped and grabbed the door handle. "Olivia!" Ethan's head snapped toward her. "What's wrong? What is it?" "I don't—" Another wave hit her, and she couldn't finish the sentence. "Ethan, something's wrong. The baby, something's wrong." The whole atmosphere of the car changed in an instant. "Oh, God!" Ethan said. Okay, hospital. We're going to the hospital. Which one, Liv? The one your doctor's at, the one on—" "No," Madison said sharply from the back seat. "Not her regular hospital. That's the first place Vance will look. He has her medical records. Ethan, he knows exactly where she gets her prenatal care. If you pull up at her usual hospital, his people will be there. Go to a different one, any other one, a public ER on the other side of the city." "She's right," Olivia gasped. "Ethan listened to her. Not my hospital, anywhere else." Ethan's knuckles were white on the wheel. "There's a county hospital 20 minutes north, Mercy General. It's big, it's public, it's got cameras everywhere. We go there." "Go," Olivia breathed. "Go, and Ethan call Diane back. Tell her where we're going. Tell her to send the police to meet us there." And so they drove north through the rain, a fleeing car carrying a repentant husband, a pregnant woman in the first grip of a crisis, and the con artist who had blown up their marriage, now trying to save their lives, all of them racing against a man who had killed before, and a clock that was suddenly measured in the space between contractions. Ethan drove and dialed at the same time. "Diane, we're going to Mercy General County Hospital North Side. Olivia's having contractions. It's too early. Something's wrong. Vance's people came to the house. We got out the back. Send police to Mercy General now, please." "On it," Diane said. "Ethan, keep her calm. Whatever's happening medically, panic makes it worse. Talk to her. Keep her breathing. I'll have units at Mercy General before you arrive." Ethan hung up and reached over and took Olivia's hand, and he held it. And for the first time in more months than he could count, he was completely, entirely present. "Olivia," he said, "look at me. It's going to be okay. Breathe with me. In, out. I've got you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm never going anywhere again. I promise you I am right here." "You'd better be," Olivia managed, half a sob and half a laugh, another contraction rolling through her. "Because if you make me do this and then disappear again, Ethan Caldwell, I will haunt you." "I'm here," he said, and his voice cracked. "I'm here. I've got you. Just hold on. Hold on for me. Hold on for her." In the back seat, Madison watched the two of them, and something moved across her face that looked almost like grief, the grief of a person seeing up close the exact kind of love she had spent 6 years destroying for money. They reached Mercy General in 17 minutes, and there were police cars already there, 3 of them, lights turning silently in the rain, and Olivia felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly undid her. Diane had done it. They were safe. They had made it. Ethan pulled up to the emergency entrance and threw the car into park, and was out and around to Olivia's door in seconds. And there were nurses coming with a wheelchair, and hands helping her out, and a blur of voices, and Ethan's face right beside hers the whole time saying, I'm here, over and over. And in the chaos, a detective in a rain-soaked coat leaned in toward Ethan. "Mr. Caldwell, Detective Reyes. Ms. Foster briefed us. We've got units en route to your residence, and we've flagged Gerald Vance. Right now, your job is to be with your wife. We've got the perimeter. You're safe here. Go." Ethan nodded, overwhelmed, and turned to follow Olivia's wheelchair inside. But Madison did not follow. Madison stood by the car in the rain, and when Detective Reyes turned toward her, she did not run. "My name is Madison Blake," she said loud and clear, her voice shaking. "I've been working with Gerald Vance for 6 years. I want to give a full statement. All of it. Denver, the Caldwells, everything. I'll testify. I'll tell you where the money is, where the records are, all of it. Just," she glanced toward the doors where they'd wheeled Olivia in, "just make sure that woman and her baby are okay. That's my only condition. Keep them safe, and I'll hand you Gerald Vance on a silver platter." Detective Reyes stared at her for a moment. Then he keyed his radio and started talking fast. And just like that, the case that Olivia had spent 6 weeks building in secret alone at a marble island in the dark cracked wide open. Not because of the folder, not even because of the recording, but because a woman who had spent her life on the wrong side finally chose at 2 a.m. in the rain to do one right thing. Inside the hospital, everything was fast and bright and terrifying. They took Olivia straight back. Ethan was allowed to stay gowned and gloved, holding her hand while doctors and nurses moved around them with the controlled urgency that is more frightening than any panic. "Placental abruption," a doctor said, reading a monitor, speaking to a nurse in a low, fast voice. "Partial. We're watching it. BP's up. Let's get her stabilized." "What does that mean?" Ethan demanded. "What does that mean? Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" "Mr. Caldwell, the doctor said, not unkindly. "The best thing you can do right now is help your wife stay calm. Her blood pressure is high, and that's the biggest danger to both her and the baby right now. Stress. We need her calm. Can you help us with that?" And Ethan, who had spent 7 years believing that money could solve any problem, that his wealth and power made him the master of every situation, stood in that hospital room and understood completely and finally that there was not a single dollar in the world that could help him here. That the only thing of any value he had to offer in the most important moment of his entire life was his presence, his calm, his love, the one thing he had spent months withholding from the woman who needed it most. So he gave it. He pulled a chair close, and he took both of Olivia's hands, and he put his forehead against them, and he talked to her. Not about the company, not about Vance, not about any of it. He talked about Delmore Street. He talked about the broken heater and the single sandwich they used to split, and the night the company survived its first year, and he'd cried in that leaking office, and she'd held him. He talked about the day they got married, the cheap suit he wore, the way she'd laughed when he stepped on her dress. He talked about every good thing, every true thing, every real thing, in a low, steady voice for an hour while the doctors worked and the monitors beeped and the numbers slowly began to settle. "You remember what you said to me," he murmured. "That first year when we thought we were going to lose everything, you said, 'Ethan, as long as we have each other, we've never really lost.' And I believed you. And then somewhere I forgot. I got so much, and I forgot the only thing I ever actually needed was already sitting right beside me." He kissed her hands. "I'm not going to forget again. I swear it on our daughter's life. I am never, ever going to forget again." And Olivia, drifting in and out on the edge of the crisis, heard him. And somewhere deep in her exhausted body, her blood pressure eased just slightly, just enough. Around 4 a.m, the doctor came back and studied the monitors for a long time, and then finally her shoulders dropped, and she smiled. "She's stabilizing," the doctor said. "The abruption is partial, and it looks like it's holding. Baby's heart rate is strong. We're not out of the woods. We'll want to keep her here and monitor closely, and this baby may decide to come early, but right now—" She looked at Ethan. "Right now, whatever you were doing, it worked. Her pressure came down. Keep doing it." Ethan let out a breath that seemed to empty his entire body, and he lowered his head onto the edge of the bed and he wept. Not the way a man weeps when he loses money, the way a man weeps when he has come to the very edge of losing everything that ever actually mattered and been given against all deserving one more chance. Olivia opened her eyes. She was pale and exhausted, and her voice was barely a whisper, but she was there. She was awake. She reached out and put her hand on his hair. "Ethan, I'm here." He lifted his head. "I'm right here. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," she whispered, and managed a weak smile. "Did we make it? Are we safe?" "We're safe," he said. "The police are here. Vance's people never got near us. And Olivia—" His voice broke. "Madison turned herself in, out in the parking lot. She's giving them everything, all of it. Denver, the whole scheme where the money is. She said her only condition was that they keep you and the baby safe. She's the reason we're going to win." Olivia closed her eyes, and a single tear slid down her cheek. "She warned us," she murmured. "The woman who ruined our marriage. She's the one who saved our lives." "People are complicated," Ethan said quietly. "I'm learning that. Turns out the wife I ignored was the strongest person I ever met, and the woman I chased was carrying more guilt than I ever imagined, and the man who ruined me smiled at me the whole time. I got everything backwards, Liv. Everything. For 7 years I got every single thing backwards." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "Not everything," she said finally softly. "You got here. Tonight. When it counted, you got here." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "That's not nothing, Ethan. It's not enough. But it's not nothing." Around dawn, Detective Reyes came to the door and knocked gently. "Sorry to intrude," he said. "I wanted you both to hear it from me. We picked up Gerald Vance 40 minutes ago at a private airfield. He had a bag packed and a flight plan filed for a country with no extradition treaty. Another hour and he'd have been gone." Reyes allowed himself a small, grim smile. Between Ms. Blake's statement, The financial records Ms. Foster subpoenaed and the recording your wife made Mr. Caldwell, this is one of the most airtight fraud cases I've seen in 20 years. Vance is going away for a very long time, and the Denver case is being reopened as a homicide investigation. Ethan gripped the detective's hand. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me, Reyes said. Thank her. He nodded toward Olivia in the bed. In 2 decades, I've watched a lot of powerful people get taken by con artists like Vance. You know how many times the person who cracked the case was the pregnant wife everybody underestimated? He shook his head. Never. Not once. Until tonight. And he tipped an imaginary hat toward Olivia and left. Ethan turned back to his wife, and he looked at her, really looked at her the way he had not looked at her in years, the way he'd looked at her on Delmore Street, and he saw finally and completely the truth. He had been too blind and too vain to see that the greatest thing he had ever possessed had never been the company, or the money, or the tower with his name on it. It had been her, all along. It had been her. Olivia, he said, when all of this is over, when the baby's here and safe and the trial's done and Vance is in prison, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. I know that trust doesn't come back just because I want it to, but I need you to know that I am going to spend the rest of my life trying, not with gifts, not with money, with every ordinary day. I'm going to show up. Every single day I'm going to show up, and I'm going to keep showing up whether you forgive me or not, because you are worth showing up for, and I was too much of a fool to understand that until I almost lost you forever. Olivia looked at him for a long time, and then exhausted, wrung out, still not out of danger but alive and safe, and finally seen, she reached out and took his hand. Then show up, Ethan, she whispered. Starting now, show up. And we'll see who you turn out to be. Outside the window, the rain had finally stopped, and the first gray light of morning was rising over a city where a billionaire had lost his empire in the night, and found in the ruins of it, kneeling by a hospital bed holding his wife's hand, the only thing he had ever truly needed. Grace Caldwell was born 11 days later, 3 weeks early, but strong and screaming and perfect. She came in the gray hours of the morning, and when the doctor placed her on Olivia's chest, Ethan Caldwell, who had once believed he controlled every situation in his life, stood beside the bed and shook so hard he had to grip the rail to stay upright. And when the nurse asked if the father wanted to hold her, he could not answer because his throat had closed completely, and he could only nod and hold out arms that trembled like a boy's. They put his daughter in his hands. And Ethan Caldwell, billionaire empire builder, the man who had negotiated deals that moved markets and stared down rooms full of powerful men, looked down at 7 pounds of squirming, red-faced life and completely fell apart. "Hi," he whispered, and his voice broke on the single syllable. "Hi, Grace. Oh, God. Hi." Olivia watched him from the bed, exhausted and radiant, and she saw something she had not been sure she would ever see again. She saw the man she married, not a trace of the arrogance, not a shadow of the mirror-gazing stranger who had turned his phone face down in a restaurant. Just a father undone holding his daughter for the first time and weeping like his heart had cracked straight open. "She has your eyes," Ethan managed. "She has your stubborn chin," Olivia said softly. "God help us both then," he said, and laughed through the tears, and it was the first real laugh Olivia had heard from him in longer than she could remember. For a moment it was just the three of them, and the beeping monitors, and the gray light, and the impossible fact of a new life. And Olivia let herself feel it, all of it, the terror of the last weeks and the exhaustion of the last hours, and underneath it, something she had been afraid to feel, something dangerous and fragile. Hope. But hope, she reminded herself, was not the same as forgiveness, and she was not ready to confuse the two. Because here is what the fairy tales never tell you. The night everything falls apart is not the end of the story. The trial is not the end. The rescue is not the end. The baby is not the end. The end, the real end, is built slowly in 1,000 ordinary mornings by a person who has to decide over and over again whether the one who broke them has actually changed or has simply gotten very good at looking like they have. And Olivia Caldwell had watched Ethan look like the perfect husband for 7 years while he was becoming a stranger. She was not going to be fooled by a good performance ever again. So when they brought Grace home, Olivia did not bring her home to the mansion. She brought her home to a small apartment, 2 bedrooms, on a quiet street. And when Ethan asked carefully where he would be staying, Olivia looked at him and said gently, but without any softness that could be mistaken for weakness, "You'll get an apartment nearby, close enough to be part of Grace's life, close enough to show up every day the way you said you would, but not here, not yet, maybe not ever, I don't know yet. And I'm not going to pretend I know just to make you feel better." Ethan flinched, but he nodded. "Okay," he said, "whatever you need, however long it takes." "You say that now," Olivia said quietly. "But Ethan, I need you to understand something before you say it again. However long it takes might mean forever. It might mean you do everything right every single day for years, and I still can't get back to trusting you the way I did. And if that happens, you don't get to be angry about it. You don't get to feel cheated because you're the one who broke it. So before you promise me patience, I need you to promise me a patience that expects nothing in return. Can you do that? Can you show up for Grace and for me with no guarantee that it ever earns you a single thing?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "That's fair," he said finally. "That's more than fair. And yes, I can do that. Because I finally understand something, Olivia. For 7 years, I thought love was a transaction. You put in effort, you get a return. You give a gift, you get affection. You provide a lifestyle, you're owed loyalty. That's how I ran my company, and that's how I ran my marriage, and it was wrong, all of it." He looked at her. "Love isn't a transaction. It's just showing up. It's showing up when there's nothing in it for you, so I'll show up. And if it never earns me a thing, then at least Grace will have a father who was there. And that's worth doing whether you ever take me back or not." And Olivia for the first time felt something crack open in the wall she had built around her heart. Just a hairline, just a fissure. But it was there. The trial began 4 months later. It was as Detective Reyes had promised, one of the most airtight fraud cases the state had seen in decades. Madison Blake testified for 3 full days. She held nothing back. She laid out the entire 6-year operation, the 4 victims, the way she and Vance had selected their marks, studied them, found the door that would let them in. She testified about Denver. She testified about the money, where it went, how it was hidden. And she testified about Ethan, about being assigned to him, about the affair being a job, and she did it looking directly at him in the courtroom, not with cruelty, but with a kind of terrible honesty. "He wasn't the worst of them," she said on the stand when the prosecutor asked her to describe Ethan. "He was lonely. That's what made it easy. Lonely men are always the easiest because they're so grateful that someone is finally paying attention. His wife loved him. He had everything, and he was starving anyway because somewhere along the line he'd stopped being able to feel any of it." She paused. "I've done this 6 times, and I want to say something to the court and to him if that's allowed." She turned to Ethan. "I'm sorry, not because it'll help my case. It won't. But because your wife is the only person in 6 years who ever treated me like I was still a human being, and I owe her the truth. So, Ethan Caldwell, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what I did. But you deserve to lose her, and the fact that you didn't is the luckiest thing that will ever happen to you. Don't waste it." The courtroom was silent. Gerald Vance did not apologize. Gerald Vance sat through the entire trial with the cold, contemptuous expression of a man who believed right up until the verdict that he was smarter than everyone in the room. He had the best lawyers money could buy. He argued that Ethan had signed every document willingly, that no fraud had occurred, that the whole thing was a bitter divorce dressed up as a crime. And then the prosecutor played the recording. Madison's voice filled the courtroom. 6 years, 4 victims, the Denver job. Vance handles the money. Vance decides who gets what. When it's done, it's done. Every word Olivia had captured at a cafe on Wren Street on an old phone in her coat pocket while 8 months pregnant. The jury took 4 hours. Guilty. On every count. Fraud, conspiracy, and once the Denver case was fully reopened, charges far more serious than fraud. Gerald Vance was sentenced to 32 years in prison. And as they let him out, he turned once and looked at Olivia, who was sitting in the gallery with Grace, asleep in her arms, and there was something in his face that Olivia would remember for the rest of her life. It was not anger, It was bewilderment. The genuine, uncomprehending confusion of a man who had spent his whole life certain that the strongest person in any room was the one with the most money and the fewest scruples, and who was being dragged away in handcuffs by a tired woman holding a baby, and who could not even now understand how it had happened. "I never even saw you," he said to her as they pulled him toward the door. "You. I studied Ethan for a year. I never once looked at you." "I know," Olivia said quietly. "That's why you lost." And then he was gone. Madison Blake, because she had turned herself in, because she had testified, because her cooperation had cracked open a homicide and taken a dangerous man off the streets, received a reduced sentence. 6 years with the possibility of parole. Before they took her away, she was allowed a moment, and she used it to walk over to Olivia in the gallery. The two women looked at each other. "I don't know what you want me to say," Madison said finally. "You don't have to say anything," Olivia said. "You warned us. You saved my daughter's life. Whatever else you've done, you did that. I'm not going to forget it." Madison looked down at Grace, sleeping in her mother's arms. "Take care of her," she said. "And Olivia, thank you for treating me like I was still worth something. Nobody had done that in a long time. It's the reason I'm going to be able to live with myself in there." She managed a small, broken smile. "Turns out that's worth more than any of the money ever was. Wish somebody had told me that 6 years ago." And then she too was gone. Now here is the part of the story that mattered most, and it is not the trial, and it is not the verdict, and it is not the sentences. It is what Ethan Caldwell did with the ruins, because Ethan's company was gone. The earlier transfers had done their damage before Vance was ever stopped. By the time the dust settled, Ethan had lost the majority of the empire he'd spent 20 years building. He was not broke, not by ordinary standards, but the towering billion-dollar fortune, the name on the building, the seat at the top of the city, all of it was gone. And the old Ethan, the Ethan from the beginning of this story, would not have survived that. The old Ethan defined himself entirely by the size of the empire. Take away the empire, and there would have been nothing left but a hollow man. But that Ethan had died in a hospital room in the gray hours of a rainy morning, kneeling beside a bed holding his wife's hand, and understanding finally that money had never been able to buy the only thing that mattered. So the new Ethan did something the old Ethan never could have. He started over. He moved into a small apartment 3 blocks from Olivia and Grace. He got up every morning at 6, and every single day without fail, he showed up. He was there for the doctor's appointments. He was there for the 2 a.m. feedings, when Olivia was too exhausted to stand appearing at her door with coffee and open arms taking Grace so her mother could sleep. He learned to change diapers badly at first, then well. He learned which cry meant hungry and which cry meant tired. He cooked meals and left them at Olivia's door and did not wait to be thanked. He did not send gifts. He had learned at terrible cost that gifts were the language of a man trying to buy his way out of showing up. He just showed up. And slowly, so slowly that neither of them noticed it happening, something began to grow back. It was in the small things, the way Olivia stopped tensing when he arrived, the way she started saving him the last cup of coffee, the way one evening when Grace laughed for the first time, they both turned to each other at the exact same moment to share it, and forgot for one whole heartbeat that anything had ever been broken. Ethan rebuilt his business too, but he rebuilt it differently. He started small. And when people asked him, investors and reporters, why a man who had once run a billion-dollar empire was now building something modest and slow and careful, he told them the truth. Because the last time, he said, I built a company and lost my family. This time, I'm building a life, and the company is just something I do inside of it. I got the order backwards for 7 years. I'm not going to make that mistake again. He built the new company around the values he had learned the hard way. He created programs to support the families of his employees because he had nearly lost his own. He put safeguards into every deal transparency, into every document, and he read every single page himself out loud twice, remembering how a distracted man had almost lost everything to papers he never bothered to read. He became known over the next few years, not as one of the richest men in Chicago, but as one of the most trusted. And Ethan came to understand that trusted was worth infinitely more than rich, because rich could be stolen in a single night by a woman paid to smile at you, but trusted had to be earned one honest day at a time, and once you had it, no one could take it from you. A year after the trial, on an ordinary evening, Olivia was standing in her small kitchen, and Ethan was on the floor of the living room with Grace, who was pulling herself up on the coffee table and shrieking with delight at her own accomplishment, and Ethan was cheering her on like she'd won an Olympic medal. And Olivia watched them, and she realized something. She realized that she was happy, not the fragile, watchful, waiting for the next blow feeling she'd carried for so long. Actually happy. And she realized she had been happy for a while now, weeks maybe, and hadn't noticed, because the fear that had lived in her chest for so long had quietly packed up and left without telling her. She dried her hands. She walked into the living room, and she sat down on the floor beside her husband, and Grace immediately abandoned the coffee table and hurled herself into her mother's lap, and the three of them sat there together in the small, warm room. "Ethan," Olivia said. "Yeah. I've been watching you for a year now," she said. "Every day, waiting to catch you, waiting for the mask to slip, waiting for the moment you'd get tired of showing up or the old arrogance would come back or you'd start treating this whole thing like a project you could complete and then move on from." Ethan was very still. And it never happened," she said quietly. "A year, Ethan. Every single day. And the mask never slipped because it was never a mask. You actually changed. You're actually different." She looked at him. "I didn't think people could really change. I thought they just got better at hiding what they were. But I was wrong. You proved me wrong. And I've been waiting a long time to say something to you, and I wasn't going to say it until I was completely sure because I promised myself I would never be fooled again." She took a breath. "I'm sure now. So here it is. I forgive you, Ethan, not because I forgot, I'll never forget, but because you earned it. Every single day you earned it." Ethan Caldwell, the man who had once believed he had built the perfect life, looked at his wife across the small living room floor with their daughter between them, and for the second time in his life, in front of the only two people in the world who mattered, he wept. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Olivia said, and she smiled, and it was the smile from Delmore Street, the one he had thought was gone forever. "You've been saying it every day for a year. I finally heard it." And that night, for the first time since the night everything changed, Ethan did not go back to his small apartment 3 blocks away. He stayed. They did not remarry right away. When they did a year later, it was small. No mansion, no 500 guests, no press. Just the 3 of them and Harold, the old accountant, who cried through the whole thing, and Diane Foster, who had become one of Olivia's dearest friends. It was nothing like their first wedding, the extravagant billionaire's affair that had announced Ethan's arrival to the world. It was better, because the first time they had married for a future they imagined. The second time they married for a truth they had survived. Years passed. Grace grew up, and she grew up in a home that most people would have called modest, and that she called perfect because it was full of something that no mansion overlooking Lake Michigan had ever contained. It was full of a father who was there, every morning, every night, every school play, and every scraped knee, and every bad dream. A father who had learned at the cost of nearly everything that being present was the only thing that ever actually counted. When Grace was old enough, Olivia told her the story. Not all at once, and not all of it, but over the years the true shape of it. She told her daughter that her father had once been a very powerful man who had almost thrown everything away. She told her that people can lose their way, and that losing your way is not the end if you're brave enough to find it back. And she told her the most important thing of all, the thing she wanted her daughter to carry into a world that would try to teach her otherwise. The strongest person in any room, Olivia told her, is almost never the loudest one or the richest one or the one everybody's looking at. It's the quiet one, the one paying attention, the one nobody bothers to underestimate carefully enough. Do you understand me, Grace? Never let the world convince you that quiet means weak. The quietest person in the room is very often the one holding it all together. And Grace, who had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin, said, "Like you, Mom." And Olivia held her daughter and said, "Like both of us, baby. like both of us. Ethan Caldwell lived a long life after that night, and in all the years that followed when he was asked to tell his story, the story of the billionaire who lost his empire in a single night, he never told it as a tragedy. He told it as the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him, because he had learned the lesson that his wealth had been hiding from him his entire life. He had learned that a man can lose millions of dollars and recover. He can lose a company and build another. He can lose his reputation and rebuild it day by day, deal by honest deal. All of those things can be lost and found again. But the trust of a person who loved you completely, who saw you when you had nothing, who sacrificed her own family's legacy to save your dream, who stood in a dark house holding the truth in her hands and still gave you one final chance to become the man you were supposed to be. That trust once broken is the hardest thing in the entire world to earn back. And that is why Ethan always said it was the only thing worth building his whole life around. The night Olivia uncovered his betrayal was the night Ethan Caldwell lost everything. The empire, the fortune, the name on the building, the illusion that he was the master of every situation. But it was also the night he finally lost the one thing that had been poisoning his whole life, the belief that he could never lose the arrogance that had made him blind to the treasure sitting right beside him, and the emptiness that had sent him searching for scraps of attention when a feast of real love had been his all along. He lost his empire, and in losing it he found himself. He found his wife again. He found his daughter. He found the man he was always supposed to be, the one who had gotten buried under 20 years of applause and mirrors. And when Ethan Caldwell was an old man sitting on a porch beside the woman he had almost lost, watching his grandchildren play in a yard that no one would ever call a mansion, he knew with a certainty that no amount of money could ever have bought him. That the greatest fortune of his entire life had never been the billion-dollar empire that took him 20 years to build and a single night to lose. It was the woman who had loved him before he was rich and stayed to fight for him when he did not deserve it. And it was the daughter whose birth had given a broken man a reason to become whole. That was his fortune. That was all of it, and it was more than enough. Because in the end, a person can lose everything they own in a single night, and still, if they are very lucky and very humble and very willing to spend the rest of their life earning it back, wake up the next morning richer than they have ever been. Ethan Caldwell was that lucky, and he never ever for a single day of the rest of his life forgot it.